Hey guys, welcome to another GameXplain discussion. I'm your host, Andrew Seegers, and this time we're again joined by Derek Binder to talk about the supposed Smash Bros. Newcomer leak as reported by Gematsu. So let's get right into it. Alright Derek, so not too long ago we posted a discussion about characters that we thought might be coming to Smash Bros. Based on evidence in the game, and various fan theories. Then we gave our supposed odds for each one, some of which, according to our fans, are way out of line. But according to our fans too, they also wanted to get our input, or have us do a discussion on something that's become kind of big. There is this supposed leak from Gematsu about 5 new upcoming characters for Smash Bros., being Shulk, Palutena, Chrom, the Chorus Men from Rhythm Heaven, and a Pokemon from Pokemon X and Y. We've already talked about several of those in our last discussion, but I think we can add on to them a little bit more. But before we get to that, before we talk about them specifically, I want to talk about why this leak has any credibility at all. Because normally we would ignore something like this. It's very rare that we discuss rumors, with the exception of Palutena, because that was a pretty convincing leak, and that even ties into this discussion here. Now, the reason this guy might have some credibility is because last year, before E3, he also leaked some characters back then, being Mega Man, Villager, Wii Fit Trainer, Little Mac, Pac-Man, and me. And of course, as we've since learned, all of those became true except for Pac-Man and me. Which could still happen, as we talked about in our last discussion. So, to me, this guy seems pretty credible, purely on the fact that, as we talked about when Wii Fit Trainer was announced, no one saw that coming. No one saw that coming, and the only way you could is if you had some kind of insider knowledge. But before I go on and on about this, what's your take on this, Derek?
I mean, you're right. It is quite convincing to hear somebody say all these things and say they're going to show up in the game, and lo and behold, they're in the game, all announced. I mean, granted, only 3 of those were announced at the time of the at E3. Little Mac was announced later, and Pac-Man and me still haven't been announced yet. But we have seen evidence of those other 2 being in the game, in one form or the other. But there's still a part of me that just sort of takes this with a grain of salt, because I'm not sure. He doesn't really say where his sources are or anything like that. It's just a leak. They're saying, "Hey, this might happen," and he got some right. And yeah, I don't know. He's very accurate, but for some reason, I'm very also just not really buying it.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think it's unfair to not completely buy into it, because there are rumors all the time about Smash Brothers with all kinds of crazy predictions, and you figure just by sheer volume, 1 or 2 of them has to be somewhat accurate. But I still have to say, that Wii Fit Trainer is really convincing to me, again, because no one saw that coming, and then we combine that with Mega Man and the Villager. I think that does speak pretty well of his potential credibility. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not completely buying into this by any stretch, but I do think this guy might have some merit to him, more so than most other leaks, which we would just ignore. Now, I know you mentioned before we started recording this that you don't think guessing the Villager or Mega Man is really that special, right?
No, I don't, because a lot of people, ever since Brawl came out, a lot of people expected Mega Man to be in the next game. So Mega Man, as wonderful it was to see him in there, it also wasn't that surprising, because they were going to bring back third-party characters. He was going to be in the game. Right. There's just no doubt about that. And Villager, I can see some people not expecting, but when you really think about it and think of new characters and think of Nintendo properties, Animal Crossing is way up there. Right. And the Villager would make sense. And you could just, we've seen Sakurai come with moveset with all these other characters before. It's not too hard to imagine him coming up with one for the Villager. And he's done quite well with that, as we've seen. So those 2 aren't that impressive. The one that's really impressive to me is Wii Fit Trainer, as you said, because I didn't expect that. I didn't even think about any possibility of being that one. So that one right there is where all his credibility to me comes from.
And I think Little Mac 2 was a pretty dead on. I mean, obviously dead on but I think that also was not hugely expected. I would say, even though he was in Brawl as an assist trophy, and while I'm sure a lot of people, did hope for him, that is kind of an out there guess too. Not anywhere close to Wii Fit Trainer, but I would say, a less predictable or less obvious choice than Mega Man or Villager.
Yeah, you're kind of right with Little Mac. I mean, not really. I mean, people wanted him in. I mean, I was one of the ones that wanted him in. I thought he was like one of the biggest ones to get in there, just because with Punch Out Wii coming out not too long ago, and him sort of being revitalized, plus just that one classic character that seemed to fit so well with the franchise. Yeah, I mean, you didn't quite expect him because he was an assist trophy before, but you also wanted to see him become a full character, so it was sort of 50-50 there. The curiosities with me are still Pac-Man and me. As we discussed in the last discussion, we have evidence of both of those appearing in Smash Brothers. And a lot of people focused, when we said that Pac-Man might show up, focused on the hidden symbol in the clouds.
Right, which we just threw out there as something that could support the idea, not as concrete proof, which a lot of people took as being that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was just sort of, hey, it's there. To me, the more concrete proof that Pac-Man might be in here is the appearance of the special flag and the Galaga aliens. There's your concrete proof, or more concrete proof. It's still sort of drying. So that makes it even more credible in that eyes, because back when it first came out, Namco was working on it, but you really didn't expect fully for Pac-Man to get in. It was, still along the lines of, well, that'd be nice. And then me sort of pops up in everything, but we also already seen, again, evidence of it popping in. So there is credibility here, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. So with that out of the way, let's talk about these 5 new characters. Now, the funny thing is, we've actually talked about most of them, all but one, in fact, in our last discussion, just purely coincidentally. But I thought we'd go a little bit further, dive a little bit deeper into these characters, maybe discuss how we think or hope they could play, and just figure out what they might do in Smash Brothers. So first up, we have Shulk from Xenoblade, and maybe X, as the very first trailer hinted at, or again, someone who looks just like Shulk. So what would you think about this character appearing in Smash, Derek? Since you played that game far more than I did, as in I didn't play it at all.
Yeah, I got about 20-25 hours in, so I mean, that sounds like a lot, but in the grand scheme of Xenoblade, it's nothing. So I got a taste of Shulk, and I really like him as a character. And the great thing is about his weapon is that, it looks like a typical sword weapon, but it has so many different special abilities to it that I think it can make him a very unique character in terms of Smash Brothers. I mean, he can slow down time, predict the future. I mean, stuff like that. He probably has even more abilities that I haven't seen yet. So I think he would fit quite well. And I'd love to see him in there. I think I put him in there as potential newcomer, just for us predicting, or just saying who we'd want to see.
Right.
I think he would fit well. I think he would work out well. The only points I have against him is he's only been, I know this is weird to say, he's only been in one game, but you can say the same about Ness.
Right. Or Ice Climbers.
And that sort of thing. And Ice Climbers, exactly like that. I'm not sure how big Xenoblade was in Japan, and I know it did quite well in the US, so he does have a shot. I mean, there is that popularity there. So I'd love to see him in, but I don't know, for him it's definitely a toss-up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything to add to that, just by virtue of the fact that I didn't play it, but if they can make him play unique, as you say, then I'm all for it, especially for a sword-based character. I wouldn't want him to feel like an existing character, so they can do some unique things with him. That'd be awesome. I'm all for that. Okay, so let's move on to Palutena, who we've already talked about a lot before, so I don't think we need to discuss it too much in depth. We've given her a whole discussion, in fact.
Yeah.
I mean, if we assume this guy's right, then it's kind of even silly drawing comparison, trying to figure out who's more likely of all these lists, because they'd all be equally likely. But if we assume this guy's wrong, I think, or if we assume this guy actually has no insider knowledge and is just lucky, I would say Palutena has the best chance of anyone on this list to make it into the game. I think she, as we talked about before in our last discussion, there's enough evidence here with Sakurai just coming off Kid Icarus Uprising to work on this game, it just makes way too much sense to be another female character to play as. I think it would just be a really great addition, and at this point I would frankly be disappointed if she's not in the game.
No, you're right on all those points. I think the only other one I think would be more likely than Palutena is the one he said next, which is Chrom from Fire Emblem, just because one of the common things we've had with all of the Smash Brothers games up to this point is we have Marth plus another Fire Emblem character from the more recent games.
Right.
Roy in the first case, Ike in the next, and potentially Chrom here. As far as going back to Palutena, again, totally agree. Love to see her. Always up for more female characters. I think she could have a very interesting playstyle. Her weapon is quite unique. It'd be interesting to see. And the same could be said for Chrom. I mean, again, he'd be another sword-based character, but I think I really hope they'd find a way for him to feel kind of different from both, from all previous Fire Emblem characters as well. Like similar, but kind of unique in their own.
Now, one character that wouldn't be a sword character is the next one on this list here, being the Chorus Man from Rhythm Heaven. And this is probably almost, if not equally outlandish, or, right around there as a Wii Fit Trainer, I would say. Because this is a totally off-the-wall prediction. Because the Chorus Men have only been in, I think, one Rhythm Heaven game. And even then, only one minigame of that game. Or maybe two minigames, in fact. But I think a lot of the games had had an alternate version. But they were, very limited appearance. And, yeah, this is like a completely off-the-wall choice. Because they don't do anything in the game but sing. So, I don't know what they could even do attack-wise. I mean, I like the idea on principle for two reasons. I like it because, one, they are a trio of characters, so they could probably move around in some really interesting ways. And they could probably give them a really unique moveset, just based on the fact that they have to invent one for them, kind of like they did for Captain Falcon. And two, they could actually tie it into Rhythm Heaven even more directly by making his moveset entirely, or their moveset, I should say, entirely rhythm-based. So maybe you have to time attack in order to build up power or something, in time, so they're equally spaced apart, for instance, or something along those lines.
Yeah, I've never actually played a Rhythm Heaven game. I know these guys from the boxes, and I've seen videos of the game. It looks fun, but I just never got a chance to pick it up myself. And yeah, it's what strikes me as odd is how little these guys actually show up. I mean, they're sort of when you see these guys, you do think Rhythm Heaven, but they're not as prevalent in the game themselves as much as you think. I mean, they have some offshoots, like there's, I believe that Marshall in Rhythm Heaven Fever, which could work there. But I think the key here is that, at least if, unprofessional, never done any kind of game design in my life, but if I was going to go, if this was set before me as make a moveset for this character, because they are so nondescript, there's very little features to them other than just a generic face and a bow tie and some, interesting incisors when they're singing their hearts out. I would actually allow them to morph into the other characters from Rhythm Heaven Fever and the other Rhythm Heaven mini games. So each mini game in each move he does transforms him into one of these other characters. So he's just constantly shifting. That'd
be kind of crazy. Yeah, that's totally off the wall. That's an interesting idea. I'm pretty sure they won't go that route.
Yeah, probably not.
I could definitely see them having his moveset reference other mini games from that game. But I think if, and by him, again, I'm talking about these three. But I feel like they could do some interesting things by having him be three characters. Not necessarily not necessarily like how Ice Climbers or how Pikmin Olimar work, but basically making these three characters behave as one, but in unique ways. I could see them having a rolling attack where they join together and form a makeshift wheel and kind of roll around. Or they could have singing based attacks. Who knows? They do have those massive jaws or incisors, those massive teeth, as you mentioned, that they could use, I'm sure. But now the interesting thing to me here is that they're not using that, again, assuming this is true, is that they're not using another Rhythm Heaven character. But there are a couple others that I can think of offhand that I would think would lend themselves better, or at least more naturally, to Smash Brothers. such as the Kung Fu guy, who's been, I think, in almost every Rhythm Heaven. He's at least been with the series since the beginning. And same thing with the Samurai guy. Now, I can see why they may not want to go with a Samurai guy, because he is another sword-based character, and he doesn't do anything particularly special. And I guess you could say the same thing about the Kung Fu guy, too. He looks distinctive, but he just punches. But, I still think they could come up with some interesting ideas for him, too, especially if they go with that rhythm-based attack idea. But, I would have to say the chorus men are probably some of the more, out there characters they could go with, some of the more original characters. And if they're, hell-bent on doing a Rhythm Heaven, character, I think they make sense in that regard, just because I could see them being a lot of fun to play with, if they come up with, a moveset that complements them.
I mean, when you look at these characters, my first thought is assist trophy.
Right.
Just something crazy with the assist trophy or something like that. I will say that I would love a Rhythm Heaven level.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I've never played the games, but just looking at them, I think they would make for a really fun, unique level, sort of along the same lines as Electroplankton or
WarioWare.
What was the drawing one?
PictoChat.
PictoChat, yeah. Something along those lines from Brawl, just Rhythm Heaven, and I think it'd be just really interesting, and that they could really bring in the rhythm idea there for how you dodge stuff or how things come in or something to that effect.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. That would make a lot of sense. But what would you think about having a rhythm-based moveset for a character? Or a moveset at least enhanced by, proper timing?
That would be very difficult. I don't know if all of his moves could do that, but maybe all of his specials in a way.
Yeah.
Just because if you're doing all rhythm, it's so easy. It would be so easy to break your rhythm, and there's so much chaos going on in Smash Brothers.
I could not play as him, by the way, because I have no rhythm. So
yeah,
I'd be doomed. But I do think it would be a very interesting character choice. But I can't think of a fighting game that's done something like that. But I guess I could say that about a lot of the characters in Smash Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I think that covers the chorus men pretty well. Now, the final character suggested by this guy in this most recent leak was a character from Pokemon X and Y. Now, I'm thinking that we may have already seen him, being Greninja. We just had the whole direct, where he was unveiled in the end, and I have a feeling that might have been him. Now, I don't know why he didn't specify which Pokemon, because I guess you could almost use it as evidence as this guy maybe not having any insider information, because saying a Pokemon for X or Y is going to be here is a pretty safe bet, I'd say. The last several Pokemon games, or last several Smash Bros. Games had a Pokemon from, I think, those most recent generations, or, thereabouts. So I don't think it's a huge stretch to predict that. When
I saw this as one of his predictions before the Direct, I'm like, yeah, that's really generic. I mean, he has one so specific with the chorus men,
right? And
then he goes extremely generic with Pokemon.
Yeah.
And that just kills it for me with any kind of credibility, man. This guy's gotten some pretty good predictions, but I just don't see it happening with him being so generic with this one.
In his defense, maybe he just can't pronounce it like me.
That could be true. But I mean, yeah, it could still happen, and that could still apply. But I mean, it seems so weird that he didn't get specific with this choice.
Right.
Yeah, it just it strikes me as odd. And here's the other thing. This guy, the only character this guy has not predicted at all from any of his supposed leaks is Rosalina.
Right.
And he had made no mention of her, yet she was in there right away. Now, granted, maybe he just didn't find that as a leak, but I'm not quite sure how he's getting these leaks. So,
yeah, I mean, that's really the question.
You would think Rosalina would be pretty out there.
Yeah, well, literally almost, right? She
yeah,
comes
exactly.
From outer space.
I don't know. Part of me wants to say this guy's onto something. Another part of me is just saying this guy is, got lucky.
Right. Yeah, that very well could be. And I think we'll get back to that briefly here in a sec. So that covers all his latest new characters. But there are still the two more that, we talked about before that haven't been, that he released before but haven't been announced yet, being Pac-Man and me. Now again, I think we're both in agreement that Pac-Man has a very strong chance of being in this game. I think he'll be here. And we've already talked about Pac-Man a bunch. So, if you want to hear more of our thoughts on it, check out our last discussion. But now there's me, and we talked about that a bit too last time. And I forget exactly what I said then because I was really tired when I recorded that discussion. But in looking back, I do think me has a strong chance of being in this game too. I think it makes sense. And I've actually kind of warmed up to the idea. I'll be honest, I've actually thought about it a bit more, and I think I've kind of come around a little bit on having me as a character. I think it could do some interesting things, as we talked about last week, incorporating, elements from all the games he's appeared in, whether it's sports or Nintendo Land or whatever else. I think there's a lot they could do with them, and especially, and I forget we mentioned it last week, but that could be how they bring in, being able to play as, like, say, Reggie, for instance, or other Nintendo spokespeople. Because they had the whole petition thing where Reggie's like, hey, if it reaches 100,000 people, maybe I'll appear in the game. But what do you think?
I'm kind of like you. I have kind of warmed up to the me a little bit. I still don't know if he should be in there, but he is a big part of Nintendo. So he has that going for him, and there really is a lot of moves that you can pull from. I mean, his physical weapons could be ranging from anything from golf clubs and tennis rackets to his practice sword for the whole sparring sections.
Right.
Then he has boxing things. But the other thing that strikes me as odd for him is that these are all items that other characters use. We have Mac with the boxing gloves. We have Peach with the tennis racket and the golf club.
That's
we
true.
have tons of other characters with swords. So all these things that would be kind of unique for him are being used by other characters in some form or another. Now, that doesn't mean that he can't have his own unique way of using these items. It just seems like if you're going to make a me character, if you're going to make me, you want to make him unique.
But there's still a couple things they could do with him, I think, that would be unique. So one would be the fact that, like with Mario Kart Wii, depending on how big your me character is, as I recall, that actually affected what weight class they were in. And maybe they could do something like that here. In fact, they could even take that and apply it to, like, your Mii's color, like being your shirt color, and do kind of like as I suggested in our analysis, I think, for the Mii arena. Where I theorize that maybe you'll release the Mii from the cage, and they might cast a magic spell, like in the Find Mii game, based on their shirt color. And they could do something like that here, where your Mii will have different spells depending on, what color they are. And that would tie in perfectly with, again, Find Mii. Would just be very thematically appropriate, I think, for this character.
Yeah, it's an excellent idea. I mean, I love it. I mean, sometimes, and there's so many unique ones that actually you could really, if you go with the shirt color idea, you could almost have, I don't even know how many different colors there are. I think like 6 to 8 or 6 to 10,
around
I think,
there,
something
right.
like there. That's potentially that many different characters you could have, and just being slightly different until you find the me that works for you.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a way of giving these at least one core character some light customability. I guess they'll have the whole custom mode too. But I mean, this would be a way of basically rolling in several different characters into one, basically. It definitely would be interesting. It would be different. And dude, if they bring in the hats from Find Me, I'm totally sold on the idea. Like, I will totally abandon whatever I said last week about the Me. If you can wear the custom hats that you earn and Find Me, I'm totally on board, because that would be awesome. If I can play like while wearing like a Virtual Boy on my head, I'm all in.
Yeah, it's true. Maybe they can just put the different trophies on his head.
Yeah, exactly. So do you have any final thoughts, Derek, on this supposed leak? Any final impressions, or I guess really, like, again, just to wrap up, what do you think the odds of this happening are? Like, how accurate do you think he is, and how much do you want these characters to happen?
I think some of his choices have a very good probability, but I'm not sure if he is 100% accurate.
I feel like he either has to be all accurate or not accurate. Like, I feel like, I mean, he obviously has been accurate to some degree so far, but I would say, that could either be because he actually knows who these characters are, or he's just making it up and he got lucky.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's hard to determine right now.
So where are you leaning, though?
Call me a pessimist, but I'm going to say he's just lucky. But I do want to say that if he is right, I'm all for it.
I agree with you in principle. I usually usually don't buy into these leaks. I usually don't even pay attention to them. I mean, we rarely discuss these type of things. Again, Palutena was the exception. But I've got to say, I actually do think this guy probably... I think he might be onto something. Again, the Wii Fit Trainer was a totally oddball choice. And when you combine that with Lil Mac, Villager, and Mega Man... and Mega Man... I think there's some credibility here. So I'm actually leaning toward him being right. You know, I'm not taking at face value. I think there is a chance he just got super lucky. But I've got to say, this is probably the most compelling, you know, leak I've seen in recent memory besides the Palutena thing specifically. And, you know, not just that, but I think several of these characters have strong chances by themselves anyway. So yeah, I'd love to see. There's no character here that I would mind, having in the game. I think they all make sense. Even the me I've come around on. And again, I'm totally sold on Pac-Man. So, all right, guys, I think that wraps up our discussion about these characters. So thanks for watching. If you liked it, make sure to like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain, where you'll find similar videos. You can find links to them in the description below, and it's just a good way to keep up to date with everything we post. And of course, keep an eye on GameXplain.com for much more on Super Smash Bros. Wii U and 3DS and other things gaming as well. Alright, thanks guys. Bye.